It's so funny how the right wing has become the party of defunding the cops, the FBI. Now they want to defund the special counsel and also, weaponize the government to impeach Biden. This is hilarious.
A Georgia grand jury has handed up a sweeping indictment accusing former President Donald Trump as well as 18 other defendants were charged with conspiring to illegally change the results of the 2020 presidential election. The former president denies all the charges, and he has now scheduled a news conference for Monday to unveil what he calls a conclusive report, proving he did nothing wrong. For more,
Right. The guy that committed a bunch of crimes is always going to claim he's done nothing wrong. That's like a guy who's murdered somebody. Are they going to say they did anything wrong? No, they're going to say they're in the right.
more on the political response we're seeing to all of this against former President Trump. Let's bring in CBS's Scott McFarland, who joins us from Washington. Scott, good to see you.
Yeah, it's great to see you, Scott. So how are Republican politicians reacting to the latest charges?
Meg and Ed, some of this is now predictable. This is the fourth time Republicans have responded to an indictment of former President Trump. They've accused prosecutors of being overzealous and politically motivated, but there's just something different this time. It's getting more into the rank and file, and there seems to be, Ed and Meg, an arms race as to who can more proudly proclaim a need for an impeachment of Joe Biden or a defunding of prosecutors who are pursuing former President Trump.
Shouldn't this be considered like obstruction of justice, trying to defund the special counsel so that they can't do their jobs?
Look at this social media post from the congressman from Oklahoma, the Republican Congressman Brasheen, where he calls the power of the purse something Republicans need to use to hold accountable the prosecutors, to defund potentially the special counsel Jack Smith. Then there.
Yeah, right-wingers have all becoming about defunding, when back in 2020, they said that defunding anything would just cause more crime.
There are others in the rank and file among House Republicans who are calling for the impeachment of President Biden, saying it's an urgent need when Congress returns here in 1 month. That's Congressman Mike Collins of Georgia, saying the impeachment of Joe Biden needs to be a first bill the House should take up in September.
Yeah, and they also want to weaponize the government against Joe Biden and Democrats, which is why they constantly scream about the Democrats weaponizing the government, because that is their projection.
You can see how Republicans are trying to elevate the investigations of Hunter Biden into something that they can make an equivalence to with the criminal investigations of Donald Trump, and you can see them wielding this power of the purse. The impeachment stuff is political theater. It's a dead end, an impeachment effort towards President Biden. But the power of the purse stuff.
Yeah, because they have nothing to impeach Joe Biden over. If they tried, it would not pass.
Ed and Meg, that's going to impact legislation. If they try to add this defund the prosecution language to the bill that has to pass the House to fund Ukraine and to help with aid money for Hawaii and for Vermont and the floods, it could get real messy and it could get real prolonged.
Yeah, let's get into that for a moment, because we're familiar with the presidential politics of this, but the congressional and spending politics are what now could be at risk in the next few weeks, because we have the threat of a government shutdown at the end of September. We have issues related to the debt limit that are still lingering. And what you're suggesting here now is there are Republicans who would essentially try to write into the spending legislation, here's the Justice Department's funding level, but let's zero out the money for the special counsel. Let's either delay or zero out any money related to, say, rebuilding the FBI's headquarters, which is a big concern of the FBI and people in the Washington area.
Yeah, because the FBI raided Trump, right-wingers are all now against the FBI and want to have them removed. It's pretty hilarious because during 2020, the idea of cutting the budget for cops was so radical that right-wingers wanted to kill black people over it. But now that a white dude got raided by the FBI, they want to totally abolish the FBI.
And let's try to play, politics and play funny with the money for other elements of the Justice Department as they continue to investigate this stuff. I mean, that's a way for them to score points and maybe off-gas some of the concern and anger people have about all this, right?
Let's put aside, Ed, the legislation that's been proposed over the past few days by House Republicans to defund, to strip all federal funding for special counsel Jack Smith. That's headed nowhere. But you better believe they're going to add that language to all these spending bills, the ones that must pass the House to keep the government from shutting down. And they certainly seem on a trajectory to add it to the emergency funding for Ukraine, for Hawaii, and for the flood-ravaged Northeast. That's going to be a critical moment when that bill comes up. Does the House Republican Conference have enough votes to pass it without that kind of language? They likely don't, which means they need Democrats to come over, and that language is absolutely toxic to them. You can see where we're headed, towards an derailment of must-pass legislation because of these efforts to defund the prosecution. And one footnote, Megan, Ed, one congressional staffer tells me they may look for ways to defund federal grant money to Georgia because of the local prosecution over which the federal government has no oversight. There is federal grant money going there. They may try to strip that, too.
Well, also looking ahead to next week, we are anticipating the first GOP primary debate. And so my question for you, Scott, do you expect the indictment to come up as a topic of discussion? And is it definite that even President Trump, former President Trump, will be there?
It's not definite he'll be there, but it seems certain the moderators are going to ask some questions about these criminal indictments. And all of this is juxtaposed in a particularly interesting way, Meg. The debate is Wednesday the 23rd. Donald Trump must surrender to Georgia authorities by Friday the 25th. Donald Trump has a key hearing here in Washington, D.C., Monday the 28th that could set a trial date in that Jack Smith 2020 election case.
Yeah, he's not really going to be able to do a lot of his debates and campaigns once a lot of his court cases really start up and he has to go to 4 different places.
All this happens at once, and it becomes clear as Donald Trump tries to stand out from those other contenders that the legal case and the political case are now inextricably intertwined. All these cases happening at the same time on the calendar as Donald Trump tries to differentiate himself from the other candidates. This is, to a degree, much of the campaign now.
Where would you rather be on the 23rd? In a courtroom in Atlanta with cameras rolling, or on a debate stage with all the other guys that are still polling in the single digits? It is a question facing the former president in the next few days, and we'll see what he decides to do. Scott MacFarlane,